There's a lot of fear-mongering when it comes to fasting, and that's because people are looking at studies that are often corrupted, that are often far from perfect. And instead of that, I like to look to nature. I like to look to the evolution of the human animal, that is Homo sapiens, to know what works for us and what doesn't. And we for sure know that humans would not be able to hunt or forage every single day of their life. There would be periods of time when humans would not be able to eat anything for a few days. And especially in winter, our ancestors evolved through thousands of years of glacial periods. So of course, there would be times when they would not have access to food. And that's where the human body comes in. The human body can sustain you on your human body fat. That's a fact. The problem is that modern humans are not metabolically flexible. They are always running on carbohydrates and sugars and never use that other system. That's why most people's attempts at fasting will fail. It will be super uncomfortable. But I'm here to tell you that you can train your body to tap into the magnificent benefits of fasting. And there are many benefits to fasting, and it's not only fat burning, although everybody wants that one for sure. It gives a rest to your gut system. It promotes autophagy, the cleanup of your cells. I like to explain autophagy to my clients like this. If you imagine a Tetris game and all these different parts just fall down without managing them, then those cells, they are not efficient. Lots of proteins that need to be folded properly, they are not folded properly. So what autophagy does, it cleans up those cells. It reconfigures the Tetris so that your cells look and function great. So obviously autophagy is a huge benefit of fasting. Rarely talked benefit is deuterium depletion, because when there's no food coming into your system for the duration of fasting, you're not taking in any deuterium. So you're depleting deuterium from your system. And I want to talk about what makes fasting easy, because I never want you to go from the standard Western diet to fasting. This is torture. So if you have no experience with fasting, if you haven't been eating natural foods mostly, then please don't try fasting. You have to get to a gateway to fasting before you attempt it, because otherwise it will be too grueling. The best gateway to fasting is the state of ketosis. So I would highly recommend to get to that stage, to build up your keto adaptation before you start flexing your fasting muscle. And the starting point will be different for everybody, depending on where you are, what your nutrition habits, what your lifestyle habits are right now. So let's talk about the worst case scenario, right? If you're on a standard American diet, if you're on a standard Western diet, lots of processed foods, lots of grains, lots of sugar, lots of seed oils. Your first step, I would recommend it to be switching to natural, real foods first. So cutting out grains, cutting out processed foods, packages as much as possible, sugar, seed oils. If you're eating processed foods, you will have to be a little bit extra patient to get to the state of ketosis and then start fasting, but it will be worth it because it will be manageable. And if something is not sustainable, we will not do it, right? So I'm gonna take you step by step on how you can achieve fasting from this starting point. The first thing I would like you to do is cut out processed foods. So anything that wasn't grown on a tree or on a plant or had no parents, please do not eat that. And also cut out grains, because grains operate on our opioid cell receptors. And that's why so many people are addicted to bread and pasta and cookies. Grains, and especially wheat, are super addictive. And grains, being a high carbohydrate, starchy, deuterium-rich food, will prevent you from going into ketosis and eventually building up to start fasting. Then, when you are comfortable with eating only natural foods, real foods from nature, you start watching your carbohydrate intake and maybe start with 100 grams per day. Then, after a few weeks of doing that, once you get comfortable, Remember, we don't want it to be unmanageable. We want it to be easy for you so that you can achieve the goal of going into fasting. Take these baby steps. Then a few weeks later, when you're ready, you can start looking into going into ketosis. And here's an important point about ketosis. You want to go all in. Ketosis is a black and white switch. You cannot be halfway into ketosis and halfway out of ketosis. So you need to dedicate 6 weeks to sticking to it strictly, to an ultra low carb diet and lifestyle that supports the transition into ketosis. And if you're not ready to commit to 6 weeks yet, maybe you need more time. Give yourself some grace and try again later. About 3-4 weeks into ketosis, start pricking your finger to measure your ketone levels. If you're still not in ketosis, you may need to drop your carbs a little more. You may need to do some more walking. You may need to practice some cold exposure and maybe start playing with fasting a little bit. All of those things will get you closer to ketosis and eventually make it easier to fast for longer periods of time. And since I mentioned walking, as far as exercise is concerned, I wouldn't recommend doing any strenuous activity while you're trying to adapt to ketosis, because your body is not ready to run on fat yet. It needs sugar, and since you are not consuming sugar right now because you're trying to train your body to run on fat, it could be even detrimental to your health to practice some strenuous activity. Things like walking, things like yoga, swimming are great, but don't do high intensity training or heavy weight lifting for a few weeks before you get into ketosis and get your energy back. The more time you spend in ketosis and the deeper your readings are from your blood sample, the easier it will be for you to practice longer fasting. And as for longer fasts, many people skip breakfast, which I think is a big mistake, because breakfast, this first meal of your day, is a big clue to your circadian rhythm that it's the morning. It's as important as the light in your eyes. Getting sunrise light in your eyes is important, and eating breakfast is important too. Try to eat your breakfast within an hour of waking and make it super rich in fats and protein. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend skipping breakfast, but time restricted early eating is the best. Eat most of your food in the first half of the day and less food in the second half of the day, and eventually you try to skip dinner. It doesn't have to be every day. It depends on what your goals are, where you're at, what kind of results you're getting. Through years of practice, I've seen again and again that in order to achieve sustainable weight loss, you need to turn to nature. You cannot knuckle your way through and follow some bodybuilder's plan if you're not a bodybuilder, if you're a normal human who wants to live and enjoy and also expect good longevity into your senior years, right? So the ancestral pattern of feasting and fasting, switching between the two, is the blueprint for optimal health and longevity. Hey, if you want to learn more about health interventions that you could do for optimal health, weight loss, and longevity, check out my free webinar.